everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Forensics. My name is Rebecca, and today I am once again joined by the wonderful Journey and Nicole. This week, we are each going to be covering a different case that relates to Valentine's Day, or that was like a crime of passion sort of thing, just in the theme of this lovely love day that we call Valentine's Day on February 14th. Just before we get started, we would really super appreciate if you guys would leave us reviews or comments or hit that like button wherever you're able to, because it really helps us. We love reading what you guys have to say. We want to make sure that we're delivering content that you guys want the most. So be sure to let us know. We love to hear from our listeners. Also, make sure your apps are auto downloading our episodes. We only see downloads and not listens. So just make sure to download wherever you can. We know numbers don't matter a lot to you guys, but numbers are just a really fun little boost in our days. So help where you can. And finally, like, subscribe, and follow us everywhere that you want to. But just before we get started, I just wanted to note that we don't really have any detailed descriptions to be advised of today, but that this is a true crime podcast, so you should still take care while listening. Yeah, but that is everything for our intro. I'm really excited for us all to get into our own little cases. I like these episodes where we all share something. It's fun and all of us learn something. So we're going to start off with a case that Nicole is going to lead us through. Nicole, would you like to share the case that you've been researching?
I would like to. This one is a semi-recent one. It happened in 2019, and it's kind of all over the place, and it really was like a clickbait title when I saw it. So if, as I'm describing it, it's kind of jumping over timelines a bit, just let me know and we can go back a little bit. But I'll start in September of 2019. So this is a bit after Valentine's Day, despite our Valentine's Day episode, but it will bring it all full circle. Don't worry. So in September of 2019, Larry Paul McClure Sr., he was a registered sex offender. He ended up turning himself into state police for failing to notify them of an address change when he moved to Kentucky from Skygusty, West Virginia. Larry was previously convicted in 1998 of first-degree sexual assault for abusing a family member between the ages of 6 and 12, and he ended up serving 17 and a half years in prison for this. He had two daughters, Amanda Naylor McClure and Anne Marie Chowdhury. I'm going to say Chowdhury. They would have been around 9 and 10 at the time of Larry's conviction. The victim's name wasn't ever made public, but between 6 and 12 was the victim's age.
It's concerning that he has kids the same age as the child he
Yes.
assaulted. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really concerning.
So I wasn't able to see if it was his child that he ended up assaulting or if it was someone else, but I do believe it had mentioned that it was like a family friend. No, it was abusing a family member. Yeah, between the ages of 6 and 12. So
yikes.
That's really sad.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know who it was, but he had two daughters and they were 9 and 10 at the time. They ended up, since Larry was in prison, they were raised by other folks during their youth. When he was questioned, so now we're in like September 2019, when Larry was questioned by police about violating the registry orders, Larry ended up sharing some information that the police weren't expecting on top of just why he may have violated these orders. And he ended up telling them that there was a murder that happened 7 months prior in McDowell County on February 14th of 2019 that he and his two daughters were involved with. And so this is kind of what started the investigation into this murder. So upon Larry's claims and confessions, Trooper K.M. Sadler, he responded to the residence where the crime occurred, according to Larry. And while he was there, Sadler found the remains of 38-year-old John Thomas Mcguire in a shallow grave, who had been reported missing in June 2019 by the mother of his three children. And John had planned to head south to Alabama to visit his mother, I guess, but he had never made it. So there were still a few months in between when he was last seen and when he was reported missing. But the plan was for him to go south, visit his mom, and he just never ended up showing up. But Larry's two estranged daughters, Amanda Michelle McClure, I'm just going to say Amanda McClure, and Anne Marie Chudhary. I'm just going to say Anne or Anne Chudhary. But Amanda was dating John at the time of his disappearance. They were initially charged with the concealment of a human body after John Mcguire's remains were found. However, the three of them would later be charged with first-degree murder in October of 2019. Larry ended up writing a confession letter to court officials in early of November 2019, and this is where he outlined the roles he and his daughters each took in Mcguire's death. And it's in those details, paired with court testimony, where we learn of the events that unfolded on or around Valentine's Day of 2019. So, it supposedly began with John Mcguire and his girlfriend, Amanda McClure, having some issues with their vehicle in Indiana where they were living at the time. Larry McClure Sr. and Anne Chudhary, who were living in West Virginia and North Carolina at the time, respectively, they ended up picking up the pair and bringing them back to Larry's rural home. And it was said or testified that both Amanda and John were dope sick at this time. So there were drugs involved. Larry would later testify that the visit went smoothly for the first few days, or about a week. I think he said about 10 days, before things ended up taking a turn, and the trio soon began to plot John Mcguire's death. On or around Valentine's Day, the four were supposedly high on a bad batch of home-cooked liquid meth, and John somehow was convinced to play a trust game, they called it, in which his feet were initially tied up, but he wasn't a fan of this, and he soon realized it wasn't quite a trust game. So he tried to get out of his bindings, but as he was trying to get out of his bindings, Amanda McClure ended up striking him over the head with a wine bottle. While all of them were high, the three of them were apparently convinced that John Mcguire was a federal informant and kept demanding to know who he was, despite Mcguire repeatedly telling them who he quite literally was, telling them the truth. And apparently at one point he ended up just listing off his social insurance number just to prove that it was him, which good for him. I wouldn't be able to do that. So
yeah, I don't think I would either.
No, I can tell you the last 3 digits, but off the top of my head, you're not getting all of them.
Yeah.
But Amanda's sister Anne would then testify that at 6 a.m. on February 15th, Amanda had told her to inject John with a syringe of what she believed to be truth serum, but it ended up being another dose of this bad batch of home-cooked meth.
Sorry, I guess, was it the psychosis that caused her to believe the exact meth she used the night before was now a truth serum?
I would think so.
Okay,
I would think so. I think there were a few things at play, to contribute to that. I think definitely the influence of the drug. But Larry McClure would then testify and confess that John Mcguire was tortured for 3 days afterwards, beginning on Valentine's Day, before Amanda wrapped a garbage bag over John's head, and then Anne strangled him with a rope while Larry held him as they killed him. They didn't go much into the torture, thankfully. I don't know the extent of it. I don't know if it really was 3 days, but it was on February 15th that a handful of Facebook posts were also posted on John's page. And I'm unclear if John posted this or if one of the 3 of them posted this to kind of like keep up the charade of him being alive. Or if it was, I don't know, one of them in their intoxicated state. Because the police did believe later on that it was February 14th that John was killed. So the dates are a bit confusing as to when things started and when he ended up being killed. But it was on or around.
Sorry, I was just going to say that makes sense that the dates are a little iffy, just given like all 3 of the witnesses were high.
Yes, very high.
So it makes sense that the timeline's iffy.
Yeah. On a very bad batch of homemade meth. But some of the Facebook posts, they were just strange and not what John's family would have expected from him to post. But it was, quote, "Job completed, the Firefox is dead," end quote. Or, quote, "Ha ha ha, the Mad Hatter," end quote. And, quote, "You are all," bracket expletive, quote, "just like Firefox, and you will all end up the same way, period. Ha ha ha," end quote.
Oh.
So I don't know who Firefox is. I don't know if that's the informant they thought they were killing.
Yeah.
What that has
Weird.
to do, but Firefox is dead. And they had to share the world about that. And I was also reading that one of John's daughters, I think he has 5 kids, but the mother of 3 of them was who reported him missing. But one of his daughters also had mentioned that it was February 18th was the last that they had heard from him. So I don't know if that's like 3 days after the 15th and he's still kind of incoherently posting on Facebook, or if someone else posted on his Facebook and they thought that was him. I don't really know, but
yeah,
it was around that day of February 14th. But the trio ended up burying John in a shallow grave in the backyard after wrapping him in a trash bag. But after about 6 days, Anne testified that Amanda and their father, Larry, started a romantic relationship with one of each other. And the trooper on the case, too, also testified or something or other that I don't know if they had evidence or how he knew this, but Amanda and her father, Larry, had sex in the building that John was killed at, being Larry's house. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not mishearing this. She's sleeping with her father.
Yeah. Her biological father. Yeah.
Ew.
That went over my head at first.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh,
so the one daughter is sleeping with her biological father with her sister in the house.
Ew.
Ew. And it's the 2 sisters who killed John.
With the father. Yes.
And they all do meth together.
Yes, you are all correct in these statements.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Oh my god. Okay.
Yep. So there's a relationship happening now. The 3 of them all helped kill and bury John. But Amanda being John's previous girlfriend at this point, Amanda, I guess, became very paranoid that John wasn't actually dead. And I have a feeling the drugs may have contributed to this as well. So she had supposedly ordered her sister Anne to dig up John's body.
So Amanda dated John, broke up with John to date her father.
Well, John was dead, so she didn't break up with John.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But John was no longer in the picture for her to sleep with her father.
So then, are we more or less safe to make the assumption that he did sexually assault his daughters?
Now, I'm not going to say yes. We don't have evidence for that. But if I were to connect the dots on some things, I would say there's a high probability that one or both of his daughters had been abused by John. Or not John, sorry, excuse me, Larry.
Right.
By Larry.
Wow. What a mess.
It gets better.
Sorry. Oh, great.
Yeah. So the defendants would later testify that John's body was dug up, dismembered, and then had nails driven through his corpse to prove that he was truly deceased. And I'm not 100% sure on the whole dismemberment aspect because it wasn't in all of the sources. I couldn't find the actual court documents themselves. So it's possible that they just meant like disfigured and it was the whole nail aspect into the body that was happening. But despite that, nails, unfortunately, were driven through John's body. He was then reburied beside the house rather than behind the house in another shallow grave. And this is where Larry then told the state troopers in September, "Hey, there's a dead body in my yard. I killed him with my daughters. You should go check that out." So then, yeah. But we still have a couple months before February and September. And so a few weeks after they all killed John, they then traveled across the state line into Tazewell County, Virginia. And Larry and his biological daughter Amanda decided to get married on March 11th, 2019. And Anne, Amanda's sister, Larry's other daughter, acted as their witness.
Do you think she was like jealous of her sister for like
I don't
marrying their
know.
dad?
I have no idea. I hope not. That would be an odd thing to be jealous over, but given the other things we've learned, I wouldn't put it past her.
A really
And
messed up
they-
love triangle.
Yeah. Are they
Yeah.
legally allowed to? Okay.
Nope. They are
So
not.
it's not a legally binding marriage. It's
not
just
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
why that matters, but that's crazy.
Yeah. She and Amanda ended up putting someone else's name down on her like marriage certificate or license as her father, considering she was marrying her biological father, so you can't really do that.
Oh man, I feel so bad for those daughters because they are so mentally unwell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah.
A mentally sane person doesn't fall into ancestral relationships with their parents.
And not saying that Larry is clean in all of this.
Oh yeah, he's not.
He's
He's not at all.
very also mentally unwell.
Yeah.
But holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay.
and I think it carries a 6-month sentence up to 6-year sentence for marrying a family member, at least in the state of Virginia, from what I read.
Wow.
But at the time when I was reading the articles, they hadn't been charged for any of that. It all had to do with just John's death and the murder there. But as I had previously mentioned, John Mcguire wasn't reported missing until June of 2019, and he wasn't found until Larry had confessed to the state troopers. In court, a state trooper had noted that Larry McClure Sr. was, quote, more of an orchestrator, quote, to the crime. But in Larry's confessional letter, he had described Amanda, his wife / daughter / John's ex-girlfriend.
Ew. That's so confusing.
That she was the ringleader of the whole thing, but they didn't know what her motive was behind it all, supposedly.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just had a thought.
Yes.
He's Larry McClure Sr.
I don't know who Junior is.
Okay, I'm like, did she have a daughter, like a son? Did he have another son that we just don't hear of? Or does he just go by Senior for shits and giggles?
Maybe a bit of both. Maybe a bit of mix of all of those options. I would think there may be a son involved in that. There was no mention of Junior involved anywhere. And no mention of whether Amanda had kids or not. But we do know that John had kids.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would think there would be a Junior out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But Larry also alleged that Amanda had spent John's monthly security or social security benefits after his death as well. So he kind of threw that in there as to maybe a motive or a part of why. But while no motive was established in court, John Mcguire's mother asked Amanda why she thought she could be God, I guess, and take her kid from her. So this again was kind of alleging at a motive where Amanda just thought she was God in the situation, I guess.
Which is not entirely out of the realm of possibility given the batch of homemade meth that they were on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But Amanda is said to have responded with, quote, Mrs. Smith, the only answer I can give you as to why things happened is John was with me and my dad didn't want anyone else near me. John told Larry that he loved me and we were going to get married, end quote. So it seems like Amanda's pinning it on Larry, whereas Larry's kind of pinning it on Amanda. So obviously something happened. I assume they annulled their marriage. Things may be a rocky start. Obviously, a rocky start doesn't make for a good relationship, nor does killing your daughter / wife's boyfriend. But that's
I think
just
even
me.
just the title daughter / wife leads to a bad relationship.
You would be correct in saying that. But Larry would then later write in his confession that he didn't want to waste taxpayers' money on a trial or hurt the family members, both John's family and his family, more than he already had. So he wrote in large handwritten letters, "Guilty, no contest." It did seem as though he showed a bit of remorse and acceptance of his punishment, as he did note that, quote, "My sentence on this does not matter because I'm old and in bad health. I will never live to see the parole board in 15 years anyway, and that's okay. I'll say I'm sorry for my part in this crime to both John Mcguire's family and my family," end quote.
Why is he so okay with this? It's like he wants to go to jail.
I don't know. He just turned himself in. He just moved to Kentucky, was like, I didn't let him know. Maybe I'll tell him I killed some guy with my wife/daughter and other daughter.
Yeah,
and
right?
Here we are. And the thing is, too, is if he hadn't told them, they probably wouldn't have found John's body because they had like no leads in this investigation, from my understanding.
Wow. That's crazy.
They weren't getting anywhere with it.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, so Amanda, she was sentenced to 40 years for second-degree murder. Anne was sentenced again to a maximum of 40 years for second-degree murder. And Larry was being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. So the courts ended up finding Larry most likely to be the mastermind behind it all, or the main guy behind it all. But yeah, there was some clickbait titles that really caught me into this. It was like, girlfriend kills boyfriend, marries dad, sentenced 40 years. I was like, yes. Clicking on that.
I would definitely click that link as well.
Yes. But yeah, they are all in jail from all of that. But I added a picture of his handwritten note. All caps, underlined, no trial, no taxpayers' money spent for a trial. So he was very adamant on this. And I think the judge, too, in some of the sources I read, the judge was saying, like, you're lucky you didn't go to trial on this because you would have been eaten alive. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I noticed that he signed his letter. Thank you for your time on this matter. Like, what do you not expect the police to investigate after you admitted to killing? Like, it just seems like the murder was like a loose end he needed to tie up, and he's like, "Oh, thanks for helping me with that, guys."
Yeah. It's like, I can die happy now, despite all of the horrific things that I've done.
He's not a nice person.
No. All three of them, I'd say. Not great. And I can't remember how many exactly, but Amanda herself, I guess, had a long rap sheet, mostly drug-related offenses, but multiple pages, anywhere from 32 to 39 previous charges or convictions.
Wow. Yeah, I believe that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the family trio, incestuous trio, murder of the boyfriend.
Wow.
That was a whirlwind.
Yep.
There's so many twists and turns.
Yep. Valentine's Day 2019.
Yeah, Valentine's Day 2019 was crazy for some people.
Crazy.
We really started this episode off hot. Oh my god.
Yeah, we really did. We really did.
Well, thank you for sharing that twisted tale of a really screwed up love triangle. I don't even want to call it that because it's so icky. Like, don't do incest. Don't kill people.
Yeah. I feel like we don't have to tell you not to sleep with your father, though. I think that should just be a given.
Like, it should just be a given.
Just don't do it.
That feels like a dare campaign. Like, say no to incest.
Yeah. Say no to homemade meth and incest with your dad.
That whole case is just like a what not to do when you grow up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Learn from their mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for that riveting case. That
sorry you gotta follow that
strange
up now.
Case. Yeah. That is a-okay. Mine is actually mine's like kind of short, so I'm just giving us a little bit of like a an intermission before we get into journeys, so that you don't have to hear my voice for 20 minutes, including the intro. So, my case takes place, well, not mine. I didn't kill anyone. Okay.
Glad to clear that up.
Yeah, just had to clear that up. So this case takes place on February 13th of 2021. So I got really close to Valentine's Day, but
It's close enough.
It's close enough. Yeah, so I'm just gonna get right into it. I never know how to transition when I'm an MC and doing a case. Like,
Yeah.
okay, introducing myself. But I am. So Penelope Jackson and her husband, Daniel Jackson, were sharing a fancy steak dinner on the evening of February 13th, 2021. And they were joined by their daughter and son-in-law through a Zoom call to celebrate Penelope's 66th birthday. For the most part, everyone was having a good time. You know, Isabel, who was the Jackson's daughter, had said that initially the evening was going really lovely. You know, like nothing was going wrong. It was pretty smooth sailing, but the vibe kind of disappeared when the argument broke out between Penelope and Daniel. So, as Daniel, I presume some of this isn't clear, but the main course of the dinner was ready, and that was being brought out to their table. Whether Daniel or Penelope brought it out, I don't know. And as they were serving the steak, their main course, Daniel brought out a plate of bubble and squeak to accompany his main dish. I had to look up what bubble and squeak was.
I was just like, what is that?
Yeah, so for everyone here that is not British, because it's a British term,
Okay.
bubble and squeak is a fried dish that's often typically made of potatoes and cabbage mashed together, but can also include like ham or bacon in it. And it's usually cooked using the leftovers of a big dinner. So like whether your family did like Sunday roast or like Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving, it's made with the leftover veg from that.
And we had a similar dish growing up that my mom would make, and we just called it poop in a pan.
I love that. Bubble and squeak, poop in a pan, same thing.
Same
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah. That is so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the steak was brought out, Daniel had brought out a plate of bubble and squeak because, you know, he likes it, thought it would go well with dinner. But Penelope very much did not think it would go well with dinner, and so they got into an argument about it being served. Apparently, at this time, Isabel, like Penelope and Daniel's daughter, had just said, like, she kind of just rolled her eyes and didn't really think anything of their argument because they're, like, she's seen her parents bicker and argue plenty of times throughout the years. Just slight other note, Isabel is Daniel's daughter, I believe, from another marriage. It gets a little bit confusing because Penelope was married 4 times, Daniel was married 3 times. Both of them had children from multiple marriages. So Isabel is the stepdaughter of one of them and the biological daughter to the other, but she grew up with them. So they've been together for quite a while now, and they did raise Isabel together. So besides the argument, Isabel said the evening went pretty smooth. And in the end, like, you know, because Isabel and her husband weren't actually at the house, they just ended the Zoom call and carried on with their night, as did Penelope and Daniel. However, it was apparently not long after ending the Zoom call, Isabel had become concerned for her mom when she received a text message from Penelope that read, quote, "If it all goes to tits, you have this message. I love you to the ends of the earth," unquote.
Such a British episode.
I know.
British case.
Yeah, this whole case is just full of British
it.
slang.
I love it.
So obviously, like, I would also be concerned if my mom texted me that. Like, that's weird. So Isabel called Penelope to ask if she was okay, and reportedly Penelope said she was fine. Like, nothing's up. Just wanted to text you. But clearly, in their own home, Penelope wasn't doing okay, as when she was on her way to bed, she chose to bring a kitchen knife to the bedroom with her. According to her, during like statements she's given to the police and stuff, I believe it was given to the police, she had said that she brought the knife to bed in self-defense. I'll talk about it a little bit in like the next slide, but throughout the trial, it had started to come out that Penelope was abused by Daniel, or at least that's what she had claimed. It was a messy trial, but she likely was. I'm not trying to take that away from her. I think she was plausibly abused. So she told police that she had brought the kitchen knife to bed for self-defense, but she had told the jury that she had opted to bring this knife to bed because she was actually considering using it to kill herself that evening. I guess I should have used that as a trigger warning. Sorry. But yes, she was considering using it to end her life, but she went to tell her husband Daniel that this is what she was planning, which is quite considerate of her. I think she was sort of hoping that he was going to tell her, like, stop, like, don't do that, I love you, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to talk her down, according to her, he instead said, quote, "For God's sake, you are pathetic."
Oh, that's
Yeah.
not good.
No, that's not how you want to be reacted to when you tell someone that you're going to kill yourself. So in response to Daniel saying this to her, that she's pathetic, Penelope, still holding the knife as she's speaking to him, lunged at Daniel and stabbed him. Daniel obviously got injured from this. I think they had said that she swiped his neck, but it wasn't like it was bleeding, but it wasn't severe or critical at that point. So Daniel was actually able to call 999, or the police in the UK. He was able to call them himself. But while he was on the phone with 999 explaining what had happened, Daniel reportedly remarked to the operator that Penelope wasn't even able to stab someone correctly. And to that, while he was still on the line with police, Penelope stabbed him twice more in the chest.
Rightfully
Fair.
so. You know what?
Like, dude, you just got stabbed. Don't provoke her more.
Especially like she's still holding the knife. Let's maybe not provoke her, because she could obviously stab you more.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. Not victim blaming, but kind of brought this on yourself, dude.
Well, if he wasn't being such a dick to her, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
So upon this happening, at this time he's stabbed 3 times. The paramedics tried to give Penelope instructions on how to keep him alive until they had arrived, but she refused to follow the instructions, and when they arrived to the house, she told them, quote, "With any luck, you'll be too late," unquote. And then upon arriving, she didn't try to hide what she did. I mean, makes sense given they heard her commit the crime.
Yeah.
But it's even reported that she had said such things like to police, or such as, quote, "I should have stabbed him a bit more," and, quote, "If I haven't done it properly, I'll be really annoyed."
Oh.
So upon notifying her that she was under arrest, she had then said to the police, "Oh, good, I have no intention of not agreeing to what I've done." So she holds full accountability of herself. It was a pretty open and shut case in that regard.
Yeah.
But after stabbing her husband of 24 years, they were married 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I
And
should
they
have
were
mentioned that
married
sooner.
4 times before that?
Yeah, she had 3 previous husbands. Her first, I don't recall what happened to the first husband, but I know that her third husband committed suicide after finding out that she was cheating on him with David. Or Daniel.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a doozy.
Interesting.
That sounds like a not healthy relationship.
Yeah.
No. And so, yeah, so they've been married 24 years, and both were married 2 to 3 times before that, and had kids with multiple of their other spouses before that. So
Wild.
they've got a big complex love life. Apparently it was after stabbing Daniel, but before police arrived, that she sat down and wrote a confession note in which she detailed basically, I guess, why she did it. She basically said after years and years of torment and abuse, she had taken so much of over the years that she just snapped. She broke by hearing those comments, and that's what caused it. So during trial, Penelope and her defense had argued that she killed Daniel as sort of in self-defense, not being directly threatened, but basically as a result of decades and decades of being victimized and shamed by her husband, and basically because of the years of assault, like I had said, she snapped. They claimed that across their 24-year marriage, Daniel had strangled her, he had threatened her, he'd sexually and physically abused her, he controlled even the smallest decisions in her life, like what she was allowed to watch on TV. And there is actually police record of Penelope calling the police on him in the past after an argument they had led her to locking Daniel in one of the rooms of their house because he was attempting to attack her with a fireplace poker.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So there is actually like recorded incidents of him being abusive, and it obviously murder's not good, but abuse is also not good. And while the defense was arguing this ongoing chronic abuse acting as the breaking point for Penelope, others were stating that Penelope might not be as innocent as you can be for just murdering someone as she was claiming to be. One of Daniel's daughters from past marriage, whose name is Jane, she had indicated that Penelope was actually the abusive partner in the relationship, and that her father always seemed on edge when he was around his wife, Penelope. Also, Daniel's second wife, so she was the wife just before Penelope, her name is Sheila, and Sheila claims that Daniel was scared of Penelope because in the past, Penelope had threatened to cut off his penis if he ever left her, and he believed that she was capable of such an act.
Wow.
Yeah. Given what we've just heard, I think she would do such a thing.
I think so too. And then Sheila had also said that Penelope always seemed to know how to find people's sore spots and poke at them. She doesn't deserve to be abused, but also Daniel didn't deserve to be abused and killed. It's in the end, this is just like not a good situation all around. But Penelope, she pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but she still went on trial for murder charges because they wanted to charge. The police believe that this was premeditated. They do not believe that she wrote the note after killing him. They don't believe that she snapped. They think this was very premeditated, planned way to get rid of her husband. So in October of 2021, she was convicted by a jury of her peers, and ultimately she was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 18 years. So that is that case in a nutshell. There is some fun, like in the articles, you'll see some more stuff like about their relationship and like stuff that it's like it's all hearsay and like she said, he said. But it was an interesting one to read through, especially like I said with the British slang that they keep throwing around.
That's crazy. It's so tough with cases like that when they're both claiming abuse because you just have no idea what to do. And chances are both sides are true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But like, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's one of the articles I was reading was interesting, and it's true. Like it's pretty tough because nobody wants to convict like if it's true and she was like severely abused for 24 years, like, and she just killed her abuser, like she's freeing herself, and it's like kind of justified, but it's like murder all but I don't know the words I'm trying to use, but
no, I get it.
Yeah, it's hard to justify like not convicting them because it's still murder even though they were victims. Like it's a pretty complex issue.
Yeah, that's crazy, especially when she was like at her wit's end, like wanting to die, and then him just be like, well, that sucks to be you, I guess, and then she just turns on him, and so it's like it went both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's yeah, I just lost my train of thought. But it absolutely goes both ways. And I think that's one of those cases that's never going to be clear cut. Like there's never going to be a good guy, bad guy.
Yeah.
But that is just the reality of it. Anyways, that was the case of Penelope and Daniel Jackson. So with that second one, out of the way, Journey, would you like to tell us the case that you have found for us for our special Valentine's Day episode?
Yes, I'm so excited. It's a little bit long, so I'm kind of going to go through and just like pick out the more interesting details. If you want to know more about it, there is an 8-part podcast that focuses very in depth on this case. So I would highly recommend going to listen to that. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but it comes highly recommended. So with that being said, I'm covering the case of Patricia Mann and Jesse McBane. In 1969, 17-year-old Patricia Mann moved from Sanford, North Carolina to Durham, North Carolina to go to nursing school. Patricia was a petite blonde with bright blue eyes, and she was attending Watts Hospital Training School for Nurses, which was founded in 1885. It was an all-girl program and quickly became the most highly regarded nursing school in the state. At the time, she was dating Jesse McBane, who would have been about 16 years old in 1969. They were high school sweethearts, and Jesse was from Pittsboro, North Carolina, which is about a 20-minute drive from Sanford. He was described as an all-American boy. He was 6'2", football player with brown hair, brown eyes, and was also very smart. His plan for after graduation was to go to North Carolina State University. And I'm not really sure if they graduated the same year or if he graduated the year after. But either way, he went to North Carolina State University and broke up with Patricia because she wouldn't sleep with him, and there were plenty of other women around who would.
It's like classic college boy reasoning.
Yeah, he's like, well, if you won't sleep with me, fine, we'll just break up and I'll just sleep with all these women. And so he went and he had his fun. And then a couple months later, they ended up getting back together. And he decided to make a commitment to Patricia and propose to her with a pre-engagement ring, which is essentially just a promise ring, in January of 1971. So he was 19 and she was 20 when he proposed with this promise ring. So at one point in a podcast that I had listened to that wasn't the one that I mentioned at the beginning, the host said that Patricia was having some concerns about her relationship with Jesse because he wasn't writing to her as often as he had been. And then he proposed to her, so all of her fears were kind of gone. And then later on, that same host said that they had actually broken up before he proposed. So I'm not really sure the timeline of when her fears started or if her fears were the fact that they had actually broken up. Either way, they are in love, and it's now February 1971. Jesse is getting ready to surprise Patricia by taking her to the Valentine's Day dance that's happening at Watts Hospital campus on February 12th, 1971. So this case also doesn't happen on February 14th.
It's around, on or around.
Exactly.
It's love season.
Yeah,
Love
it's
season.
the full week, basically. The full weekend.
Exactly. So he arrived and they went to this dance with about 50 other people. They ended up leaving between 11 and 11:30 p.m. Patricia had to sign out with her dorm mother and be back by curfew, which had been extended to 1 a.m. for the dance. They drove to a popular Lover's Lane spot in a cul-de-sac where there were like no houses built. It was just the streets, and it's next to a golf course. And that was the last time they were ever seen again or seen alive, was them heading to that Lover's Lane spot. The next day, Patricia still hadn't come back, and so her friends were very worried. And so this is where information gets very confusing because each source that I saw had a different timeline. So one source said that Patricia's nurse friends called a bunch of hospitals looking for them in case there was a car accident. They also went to a bunch of the Lover's Lane spots to look for their vehicle, which they found. And when they found the car, there was nothing amiss. There were 2 jackets in the back seat, and Patricia's tights were folded on the passenger seat. And then it was only after they found this car that the police got involved, because until the car was found, they just thought that this couple had like eloped together because a young couple just not coming home wasn't really cause for concern.
Mm-hmm.
Another source said that the police found the car the day like after their disappearance. Another source said that it took 4 days for the police to find the car. And then yet another source said that Jesse's brother's friends found the car like 4 days after they went missing. So I don't know.
Interesting.
But yeah, they found the car it was like locked and there was nothing amiss, like, which is weird. There was no sign of a struggle in or around the car. However, the steering wheel, gear shift, and other areas had been wiped clean except for a small area on the radio, which, if the friends had found it first, perhaps they could have wiped it clean. But if the police had found it first, then that's weird. Actually,
How do
either
they
way, it's
know?
weird.
I was gonna say, how do they know it's wiped clean though?
There were no fingerprints.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a bit strange.
Right? Especially because those are places where there should be lots of fingerprints.
Yeah, high touch
Yeah,
areas.
totally.
And so then once police realized this couple was actually missing, they started searching the city with no luck until February 25th, 1971, which was 12 days after they were reported missing. A land surveyor who was hired by the state to locate a property marker saw what he thought was a mannequin leg sticking out of a pile of leaves. However, when he poked it, he saw a skin move, so he called the police, and it turns out he had found the missing couple.
Oh.
Yeah. So they were found at the edge of a forest about 250 yards from a private dirt road that marks the border of Orange and Durham County, and it was 3 miles from where their car was found. One source said it was just in like another cul-de-sac at kind of another like lover's lane spot or whatever that was just a bit more secluded, but I'm not really sure. And because it was found on the border of these counties, there were some huge jurisdictional issues, which in my opinion is why this case went unsolved for as long as it did, was because there was 6 different agencies trying to solve this case and not sharing information.
Oh,
Because
God.
they had
Yeah, I can see how that would be an issue.
Exactly. They had the Orange County and Durham County Sheriff's Offices, the Durham Police Department, the State Department of Investigation, and the FBI, as well
Jeez.
as the Department of License and Theft, which is now the DMV.
Oh.
Huh.
Yeah. So they were all
I
looking
did
into
not
this
know
case.
that's how the DMV started. Sorry.
Yeah.
off topic.
Right? So I don't know if that was just North Carolina specific, how their DMV started or what, but also annoying that they were just like, no, we have to solve this case. Let's not work together.
Yeah.
So Patricia and Jesse were found bound with a hemp rope to an ancient oak tree. They were found slumped over on the ground with their arms tightly bound behind their backs. There were additional ropes from their necks that indicated they had been hanged. Investigators learned that they had been hanged repeatedly to the point of unconsciousness, released, and woken up over and over again until they finally died.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so not great. There was no evidence of sexual assault. However, Patricia had been hit so hard in the stomach by something that it bruised her liver. Jesse had no serious wounds or bruising outside of the rope marks, and there was no evidence of alcohol or barbiturates in their system, but they each had a small puncture wound in the same place below their right breast. And so it's thought that the killer poked them with something to see if they were really dead.
Oh. Interesting that
weird
it's the
in
same spot.
place.
Yeah, same spot on both
Mhm.
bodies.
Yeah, so not really sure what that means. But also, their right eyelashes were missing.
Oh.
That's weird.
Maybe a
Yeah.
little souvenir? Is that insensitive? I don't know. Probably
Well,
insensitive.
What a
it does-
weird souvenir, though.
Yeah. It's just odd. And
Interesting.
I don't understand. Like, I don't know if
Like,
that's
just
a
their
coincidence
right
or
one.
something.
Just their right ones, not
Yeah.
their left or eyebrows or any other hair on their body.
And it was only the lashes, right? Like,
That's as far as I know.
So odd.
that is so bizarre.
Yeah, and this could be something that's not true because each source said something different, so I don't know.
I
But
love
either way, though.
the news. They all have
Right?
something different to say.
Exactly. And speaking of news, a TV reporter was actually at the crime scene and documented this case and had it on TV before the authorities had the chance to notify Patricia and Jesse's parents. So that's how the parents found out.
Yikes.
That's fucked up.
Yikes.
Terrible. So
They
this
should
case,
be fired.
right? Like, I understand that you're doing your job, but at least give the police a chance to do their job as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this case was just crazy out of the ordinary for this little area. It took the world by storm and was quickly dubbed the Valentine's Day murders. Hence covering it on our Valentine's Day episode.
Hence today.
So there's a strong possibility that the suspect knew the victim because there was no sign of a struggle leading to the site. The investigators also wonder why Jesse wouldn't have put up a fight when he had the size to. They also considered the idea that there might have been two suspects because they were able to put the couple in the trunk of a car and tie them up with no evidence of a struggle. In 1973, it was admitted that the police still had no idea what the motive was or who did it, and they thought they caught the guy when officials in Georgia caught William J. Pierce Jr., who had gone on a killing spree that brought him through North Carolina, but he had a rock-solid alibi and there was no sexual assault, which had been present at each of his scenes, so they excluded him as a suspect. A few years after their disappearance and subsequent death, 2 students from Duke University were kidnapped, and it made people question if the same person who kidnapped them also killed Patricia and Jesse. The male and female victims were forced at gunpoint into a car and driven to a secluded area just after 1 a.m. They were able to escape when the kidnapper tried to force the female student into the trunk of the car, and the suspect was described as a slender white man with brown hair who spoke with a southern accent, and no arrest was ever made, and the sheriff at that time said the only similarities were that the victims were both students, but I feel like there's just a little bit more similarities than that, but I'm not a sheriff. And investigators over the years sought the help of James Russell, who we saw in the Mad Bomber episode and the Evolution of Behavioral Analysis episode. So it's kind of cool.
He's popping up a lot lately.
Yeah,
Damn.
he has been. It's weird. And so he determined that the killer was probably an athletic man between 25 and 40 years old who was paranoid and out to, quote, cleanse the world, end quote. And it was reported that in the Durham Sun that Russell had said that it was a grudge killing and that the killer was a loner. He was a neat, precise man with an average or above average education. He also suggested that the killer was clean shaven and would have no criminal record and an excellent record at work. And he would avoid attention and look to blend in with the crowd. Russell also said that he would most likely tease the detectives, believing that he was smarter than them. And he believed that the killer might have suffered rejection by his mother and considered himself above people. He would have acted alone, which went against their leading theory of 2 people taking Jesse and Patricia, but that was his profile. So the case lies dormant for like 30 plus years, and then it is reopened in 2010 by Orange County Sheriff's detectives Tim Horn and Don Hunter, and they were refocusing on 3 main suspects: James Brandon Ray, James Stephen Walter Wilson, and Robert Carl Britt. I believe these 3 individuals had been investigated at the time in 1971. They are just re-investigating them in 2010. And so James Ray had the most access to the couple because he worked as an orderly in the same ward as Patricia. He didn't like Jesse and suggested that Patricia had been cheating on him. He had a long rap sheet of theft and fraud, and a witness put him within a mile of the murder site at midnight the night they were killed. Another neighbor said that Ray had stolen hemp rope from him, and when investigators showed him a picture of the rope that was used in the killings, he was like, yeah, that's it, which
just
is
like
so
a
weak.
quick, but it just, I'm just trying to think of how many people are like, yeah, he stole my hemp rope. Like, first of all, how many people are keeping track of their rope?
Exactly.
That's interesting. But anyways, that was just a side note.
Yeah, because all rope looks the same to me. So it's like, unless there's something noticeably different.
Yeah.
But
hemp rope.
Again, how do you know it's yours?
Yeah.
So Ray agreed to 2 polygraphs and both were inconclusive, which is not shocking.
Nope.
Police were able to search the vehicle he had police weren't able to search the vehicle he had at the time of the murder because he had already sold it.
Right.
There was no physical evidence linking him to the murders, and he passed away in 2009 at the age of 70. The next suspect is Dr. James Stephen Walter Wilson. He practiced medicine at Watts Hospital and lived 2 blocks from where the bodies were found and had apparently driven past the Lover's Lane where Jesse and Patricia were that evening. I don't know how they knew that. He was kind of known as a mad genius at the hospital because he was very smart but very mean and angry. And he had an alleged history of assault and leaving threatening messages. And word around campus was that Patricia had denied his advances, which made him mad. And then on the night of the murders, he was supposed to go to a dinner party at 8 p.m., but didn't show up until after midnight, which,
Damn.
yeah.
Who shows up for a dinner party like past midnight? Like if I
Whose
invite
dinner
you
party is
for
still
dinner,
going after midnight?
Dinner's gone.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. And so when he arrived, he looked concerned and kept looking out the windows. There was also no evidence linking him to the crime, so he was never arrested. And he also passed away in 2009 from heart failure. The last suspect is Dr. Robert Carl Britt, and he is the prime suspect in the eyes of Detective Horn. He had his own medical practice in Durham, not far from Watts Hospital. And during the investigation of kidnapping of 2 teen hitchhikers in 1973, Britt was investigated because his vehicle matched the description given by the teens. And so these teenagers claimed that the suspect impersonated a police officer, and they identified Britt from a series of photographs. Britt obviously denied doing this and said, quote, "I hope you guys catch the guy who did this to those boys because he sounds like the same guy who killed those kids a few years ago," end quote. And so investigators were like, whoa, what a weird thing to say, and kind of trying to tie it back to the profile given by Russell that the killer will tease officers about the crime. 20 years later, in 1995, he was accused of beating up a woman in a road rage incident. He claimed self-defense, but the jury didn't buy it, so he was found guilty of misdemeanor assault. I don't know if he spent any jail time. And then in 1996, an anonymous caller phoned Jesse McBane's mom and said that he was the guy who killed her son. And when she asked what his name was, he said Dr. Britt. Police were able to trace the phone call to a payphone in a local shopping plaza, but couldn't find who placed the call.
What year was this? Sorry, I missed this.
1996.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the CCTV footage probably isn't the best or existent in this mall. Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like it would be pretty easy now to just like watch it and see who was at that payphone at the time the phone call was made. And then in 2012, investigators arrived unannounced at his house, and he let them in without asking like any questions. They talked about his history in Durham and then brought up the Mann McBane murders. Britt laughed and said, quote, "You know, that happened 40 years ago. And 40 years from now, none of this will even matter," end quote. Which is...
That's a pretty bold thing to say about an unsolved murder.
Yeah. So the cops pressed him for more information, and the mood drastically shifted in the room. And when the interview was over, they asked him if he would provide a DNA sample. And he initially said yes, but later the police received a phone call from his lawyers saying that he would not be submitting DNA. He had never provided an alibi for the night of February 12th, 1971. And as of late 2023, he was still practicing internal medicine at 87 years old. And I think he's still, like, I Googled him and it didn't say he died.
So I do not want an 87-year-old practicing medicine on me.
Me either. That is internally concerning.
You can give me Advil. You can check my pulse. I don't need you cutting me open.
Especially one with such a history of rage and anger and suspected murder.
Yikes. And also, why are... I mean, I guess you said alleged, like, assault, like, that he's committed, so it's not confirmed, but, like, I feel like I don't want anyone who's ill-tempered or, like, possibly aggressive to be my doctor.
Right? Well, he has charges against him for beating up that woman in the road rage incidents. Like, he...
Right. I forgot about that.
He has a record. Wow.
Another weird coincidence is that James Ray actually worked for Dr. Britt after his release from prison in Florida in 1976. And I couldn't find if it was James Ray who was released from prison or if it was Dr. Britt who was released from prison. I'm going to guess James Ray, but I don't know. It's just a weird connection between the two. And so that brings us to 2017 when police made one last attempt to solve the murder. A small piece of rope from around the necks of Jesse and Patricia was sent for DNA analysis. I don't know why they chose only this small section, I probably would have chosen the part where he had grabbed to hoist them up, and I maybe would have analyzed a lot more of the rope.
That's
However,
fair.
I don't know how much they were able to. So they used MVAC DNA collection, which is a wet vacuum system that can extract DNA from difficult places, such as inside the knots that were tied in the ropes. And so it sprays this solution out, and then that fluid is captured and condensed onto a filter where the DNA profiles can then be extrapolated from, which sounds so cool. And there are only 80 MVAC systems in the world, and 40 of them are in the USA, which is kind of crazy. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough DNA to compare to anything. There was only enough to say that there were 3 profiles, but nothing more than that. That's all I have, but I would highly suggest that you guys go listen to that podcast. It sounds very interesting. 2 investigative journalists and Tim Horn, the Orange County investigator, actually teamed up to create it, which I think is really cool. They kind of compared notes and they were able to share things with each other that each other didn't know or whatever. Like the journalists had information and clues and stuff that the detectives didn't have. But yeah, so it's still unsolved. If you know anything about this case, please contact the Orange County Sheriff's Department at 919-644-3050 or visit the Orange County Sheriff's Office website at www.ocso.com.
Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a sad one. That's a
Yeah.
sad one because it's like it was just 2 kids in love and
Mhm.
someone had to go and ruin the rest of their lives.
And it's still unsolved.
Still unsolved, yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope with like all the advancements and stuff and like genealogy and stuff like that, we can maybe bring some justice to their case. But I mean, if there's
Yeah.
no DNA of like the actual killer, then it's kind of hard to say. But
Exactly.
yeah, but thank you so much for telling us about that case. I actually like when I was looking for cases to do for this episode, I came across this one, read like one sentence, and I was like, that's really neat or interesting. And then I was
Yeah.
like, why is it familiar though? And then I remembered that you were already doing it. And I was like, oh. So I was really excited for this one.
Yeah. There was a lot more information for it than I was expecting an unsolved, like 50-plus-year-old murder to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I find you like usually they're unsolved because they just didn't have anything to start with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Journey, both for telling us about these interesting, twisty turny cases. There was a lot of things that I didn't expect to hear today.
I'm just looking back at my notes too, and just quickly fact checking, correcting myself. It wasn't 32 charges that Amanda had, it was 32 pages of charges. So,
Oh my
so
god.
I don't know if it's one
Wow.
charge per page or how many charge per page, but yeah, I'm just reading it back now. Extensive criminal history was supposedly 32 pages long and included
That
mostly
is-
drug-related crimes.
That is
Wow.
insane.
Yeah.
If American records are anything like Canadian records, then it's definitely more than one per page.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Anyways,
that's
sorry to just
insane.
sprinkle that on at the end.
Oh no, thank you. We love more facts. Yeah, so once again, thank you guys so much. I love learning with you guys and hearing about all of the crazy, messed up stuff that humanity does. With that being said, our next topic or our next episode is on a really, really screwed up Japanese serial killer. Really, really twisted. So if you're into that sort of thing, definitely check out our next episode on Satomu Miyazaki. He's also known as the Human Dracula, if that gives you any sort of hint to what we're going to be discussing. With that being said, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to find more episodes or you want to find where we talk about our sources and some just other fun content, learn more about us, you could find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, all at What the Forensics. Our website, where you will find our sources that we discussed, as well as any like images or like the confession note, for example, that Nicole had shared. Those are all going to be on our website at whattheforensics.ca. We like to call it our one-stop shop for everything forensics. or you can email us at whattheforensics@gmail.com if you have any questions or concerns, or you just want to chat. So, with that said, this has been another episode of What the Forensics. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Just a reminder to everyone that we are not professionals in the forensic science field. We are just interested in forensics and want to share what we are learning with our listeners. We're trying to give you the most accurate information, but we are human and can make mistakes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week.